Imagine a place so infamous that simply hearing its name once struck fear into millions of Americans. A prison whose towering walls, harsh discipline, and electric chair became symbols of justice, punishment, and controversy for more than a century. This is the incredible story of Sing Sing Prison, one of the oldest, most feared, and most influential prisons in the history of the United States. Located along the Hudson River in Ossining, New York, Sing Sing has stood since the early 1820s. For over 200 years, it has witnessed some of America's most notorious criminals, groundbreaking prison reforms, daring escape attempts, executions, and dramatic changes in the philosophy of criminal justice. But Sing Sing is far more than a prison. It became the center of an empire that shaped how correctional systems across America were designed and operated. The prison's origins are unlike any other. Instead of hiring outside workers to build it, the state of New York ordered prisoners from another facility to construct the prison themselves. Under constant guard, inmates quarried massive stones from the surrounding land and slowly erected the enormous walls that would later imprison thousands of others. Every block, every tower, and every cell carried the labor of the very people who would spend years behind them. Life inside Sing Sing was designed to be harsh. Prisoners followed strict rules where silence was mandatory. Speaking without permission could lead to severe punishment. Days began before sunrise and ended after exhausting hours of labor. Inmates worked in workshops producing furniture, clothing, shoes, iron products, and countless other goods that generated enormous profits for the state and private businesses. This prison labor system eventually became one of the largest prison industries in America. Throughout the 19th century, Sing Sing became famous not only for discipline but also for its role in the growing industrial economy. Businesses relied on prison labor because it was cheap, reliable, and highly profitable. Entire industries benefited from contracts with correctional institutions, creating an economic empire surrounding incarceration. Critics argued that this unfairly competed with free workers, while supporters claimed it reduced prison costs and taught valuable job skills. As decades passed, Sing Sing housed some of America's most infamous criminals. Gangsters, murderers, kidnappers, organized crime figures, and notorious outlaws all passed through its gates. The prison gained national attention whenever a famous criminal arrived, turning Sing Sing into a household name across the country. Perhaps the prison became most feared because of its execution chamber. The electric chair, nicknamed Old Sparky, transformed Sing Sing into one of America's primary execution sites. Hundreds of condemned prisoners met their end inside its walls. For generations, the thought of being sent to Sing Sing carried an unmistakable meaning that terrified criminals throughout the nation. Yet the prison was never only a place of punishment. Reformers believed rehabilitation should replace pure suffering. Educational programs, vocational training, libraries, religious services, and counseling slowly emerged. Some wardens introduced progressive policies that encouraged prisoners to develop skills, earn trust, and prepare for life after release. The 20th century brought enormous challenges. Overcrowding, violence, organized prison gangs, corruption, and public criticism forced repeated reforms. Newspapers closely followed every major incident, making Sing Sing one of the most closely watched correctional facilities in America. Political leaders debated whether prisons should focus on punishment or rehabilitation, and Sing Sing often stood at the center of those national conversations. During the Civil Rights era and later decades, prison conditions across America came under increasing scrutiny. Laws changed, inmate rights expanded, and correctional philosophies evolved. Sing Sing adapted through modernization, improved medical care, expanded educational opportunities, and stronger oversight while continuing to house maximum security inmates. Despite its terrifying reputation, many former inmates have described Sing Sing as a place of personal transformation. Some learned trades, earned college degrees, discovered faith, or rebuilt broken lives before returning to society. Programs involving theater, journalism, education, and counseling demonstrated that even within one of America's toughest prisons, change remained possible. Today, Sing Sing remains an active correctional facility while standing as one of the most historically significant prisons in American history. Its story reflects the evolution of the nation's criminal justice system, from brutal punishment and forced labor to modern debates about rehabilitation, public safety, prison reform, and human dignity. The story of Sing Sing is ultimately the story of America itself. It reveals changing ideas about crime, justice, punishment, economics, politics, and redemption. Behind its famous walls lies not only the history of dangerous criminals, but also the history of a nation constantly redefining what justice truly means. The story of Sing Sing prison begins in the early 19th century, during a time when the United States was experiencing rapid population growth, increasing urbanization, and a rising concern over crime. New York's existing prisons had become overcrowded, and state officials believed that a larger and more secure correctional facility was needed to house the growing number of convicted criminals. In 1824, the state of New York selected a location along the eastern bank of the Hudson River in the small village of Mount Pleasant, which would later become the village of Ossining. The site was chosen not only for its isolation but also because it contained a massive deposit of high-quality limestone that could be used as a building material. This natural resource would become the foundation of one of America's most famous prisons. What made the construction of Sing Sing truly remarkable was the workforce that built it. Rather than hiring civilian laborers, the state transferred approximately 100 inmates from Auburn Prison to the construction site under heavy armed guard. These prisoners lived in temporary wooden barracks while working long hours every day to create the prison that many of them would eventually occupy. They cut enormous limestone blocks directly from the nearby quarry, shaped each stone by hand using primitive tools, and transported the heavy materials across the construction site. The work was physically exhausting, dangerous, and relentless, yet it progressed at an astonishing pace because the inmates had little choice but to continue under strict supervision. The prison's design reflected the correctional philosophy of the era, which emphasized order, discipline, and complete control over inmates. Engineers and architects planned a fortress-like structure with towering stone walls that rose high above the surrounding landscape. Massive iron gates, narrow windows, thick masonry walls, and long rows of individual prison cells were all intended to prevent escapes while constantly reminding prisoners of the authority that surrounded them. Every part of the facility was carefully arranged so that guards could monitor inmate movements, making it one of the most secure prisons in the nation at the time. The location beside the Hudson River also played a critical role in the prison's development. Barges and boats traveling along the river could easily transport construction supplies, food, equipment, and later, manufactured goods produced by inmate labor. The river connected Sing Sing to New York City and other major commercial centers, allowing the prison to become more than just a correctional institution. Its strategic location helped transform it into an important industrial complex that would eventually generate significant economic value for the state through prison labor and manufacturing. As construction continued throughout the late 1820s, additional cell blocks, workshops, kitchens, administrative buildings, and guard facilities were added. The prison steadily expanded into a self-contained community enclosed by towering stone walls. The same inmates who had quarried the limestone and laid the foundations also built roads, workshops, storage buildings, and much of the prison's internal infrastructure. Their labor created a facility capable of housing hundreds of prisoners, making Sing Sing one of the largest correctional institutions in the United States during its time. From the very beginning, Sing Sing represented more than just another prison. It became a symbol of the changing American approach to crime and punishment. State leaders believed that strict discipline, constant labor, and complete isolation from society would discourage criminal behavior while making prisons economically productive. This philosophy heavily influenced correctional systems across the country, and many later prisons borrowed architectural features, security practices, and labor programs that had first been developed or refined at Sing Sing. Within only a few decades, the prison's name became recognized throughout America, symbolizing both the immense power of the justice system and the harsh realities awaiting those convicted of serious crimes. One of the defining features of early life at Sing Sing was the rule of silence. During much of the prison's history, inmates were forbidden from speaking to one another unless specifically authorized by prison staff. Meals were eaten in complete silence, work was performed without conversation, and prisoners marched through the corridors in disciplined lines with their eyes facing forward. Officials believed that silence reduced opportunities for planning escapes, organizing resistance, or spreading criminal ideas among inmates. However, many prisoners described this enforced silence as emotionally exhausting, with some finding the isolation more difficult than the physical labor they performed each day. The prison cell blocks were designed for security rather than comfort. Individual cells were narrow, with thick stone walls, heavy iron bars, and minimal furnishings. Most contained only a simple bed, a small shelf, basic sanitation facilities, and very limited personal belongings. Ventilation was often poor, especially during the summer months, while winters inside the stone structure could be bitterly cold. The lack of privacy meant that prisoners lived under constant observation, with correctional officers regularly patrolling the corridors throughout the day and night. The sound of metal doors closing, keys rattling, and footsteps echoing through the cell blocks became part of everyday life. After the morning inspection, inmates were assigned to work details throughout the prison. Labor formed the foundation of daily life at Sing Sing and occupied much of every weekday. Prisoners worked in machine shops, blacksmith forges, textile factories, woodworking shops, shoe manufacturing facilities, printing departments, and numerous other industrial operations. The work was physically demanding and often repetitive, requiring inmates to maintain steady production for many hours. Guards closely supervised every workshop, ensuring that prisoners remained productive while enforcing strict discipline. The belief was that hard work would instill responsibility, reduce idleness, and make the prison financially self-sufficient. Meals inside Sing Sing were simple, inexpensive, and carefully regulated. Breakfast often consisted of bread, oatmeal, and coffee, while lunch and dinner usually included soup, vegetables, beans, potatoes, and occasionally meat. Food was prepared in large prison kitchens designed to feed hundreds of inmates efficiently rather than comfortably. During earlier decades, meals were eaten quickly and quietly, with little opportunity for conversation. Prison officials focused on providing sufficient nutrition to keep inmates healthy enough to work, rather than offering variety or comfort. Over time, improvements in nutrition and food preparation reflected changing standards in prison management, although meals remained basic by modern standards. Discipline was one of the most feared aspects of life inside Sing Sing. Any violation of prison regulations, whether refusing orders, fighting, possessing contraband, attempting escape, or even speaking without permission during earlier periods, could result in punishment. Throughout the 19th century, disciplinary measures were often severe, including solitary confinement, reduced food privileges, loss of work assignments, or extended periods of isolation. Solitary confinement, in particular, placed prisoners alone in small cells for days or even weeks with minimal human interaction. Many inmates found these punishments psychologically devastating, leading prison reformers to question whether such harsh methods truly encouraged rehabilitation. Despite the prison's strict atmosphere, inmates gradually developed ways to cope with daily life. Some focused on learning skilled trades that could provide employment after release, while others turned to education, reading, religion, or physical exercise to maintain hope during long sentences. Friendships formed quietly despite restrictions, and experienced inmates often guided newcomers through the unwritten rules of prison life. Over the decades, educational classes, vocational training, libraries, religious services, and counseling programs expanded, offering prisoners opportunities for personal growth that had been almost non-existent during the prison's earliest years. Living inside Sing Sing demanded constant adaptation. Every prisoner had to learn the routines, understand the hierarchy among inmates and officers, and navigate an environment where mistakes could carry serious consequences. For some, the prison became a place of fear and despair, while for others it became an unexpected opportunity to reflect, acquire new skills, and prepare for a different future. The daily rhythm of discipline, labor, confinement, and survival shaped generations of inmates, making life inside Sing Sing one of the most closely studied examples of incarceration in American history. One of the most remarkable and controversial chapters in the history of Sing Sing prison was not found inside its cell blocks or guard towers, but in its vast industrial operations. While most people remember Sing Sing as a maximum security prison known for dangerous criminals and strict discipline, it also became one of the largest prison manufacturing centers in the United States. For more than a century, the labor performed by inmates generated enormous wealth, supported state finances, supplied businesses with inexpensive products, and helped create what many historians describe as a prison industrial empire. This system transformed Sing Sing from a correctional institution into an economic powerhouse whose influence extended far beyond its stone walls. From its earliest years, New York State believed that prisoners should work instead of remaining idle. Officials argued that productive labor served several purposes at once. It kept inmates physically occupied, reduced the chances of violence or escape attempts, taught practical job skills, and helped offset the enormous cost of operating the prison. As a result, nearly every able-bodied prisoner was assigned to a work detail shortly after arriving at Sing Sing. Labor was not considered optional. It was viewed as an essential part of imprisonment and an important tool for maintaining discipline and order throughout the facility. The prison quickly developed a wide range of industries capable of producing thousands of products each year. Large workshops were established where inmates manufactured furniture, shoes, clothing, barrels, iron tools, nails, farming equipment, brushes, textiles, ropes, and household goods. Skilled prisoners worked as carpenters, blacksmiths, machinists, printers, stonecutters, tailors, and metalworkers. Others performed less specialized tasks such as assembling products, transporting materials, cleaning workshops, or maintaining machinery. Every workday followed a strict schedule, with prisoners spending long hours producing goods under the constant supervision of correctional officers and civilian foremen. The quality of many products made at Sing Sing became well known throughout New York and neighboring states. Government agencies purchased furniture for public buildings, schools, and offices, while local governments ordered equipment and supplies manufactured by prison labor. Some products were sold through private contractors who entered into agreements with the state, allowing businesses to profit from the inexpensive workforce housed inside the prison. These contracts became highly valuable because inmate labor cost significantly less than hiring workers in the open market, creating substantial financial benefits for both private companies and the state treasury. As the 19th century progressed, Sing Sing's industrial operations expanded dramatically. Entire buildings within the prison complex were converted into factories filled with workbenches, mechanical equipment, furnaces, sewing machines, woodworking tools, and metalworking machinery. The sound of hammers striking steel, saws cutting timber, and machines operating echoed through the prison for hours each day. The workshops functioned much like factories outside the prison walls, except that every worker was an inmate living under strict correctional supervision. This unusual combination of incarceration and industrial production made Sing Sing one of the most economically productive prisons in the nation. The profits generated by prison labor became an important source of revenue for New York State. Income from manufactured goods helped pay for prison maintenance, construction projects, food supplies, security operations, and administrative costs. State officials often pointed to these financial benefits as evidence that prison industries reduced the burden on taxpayers while making correctional institutions more self-sufficient. Supporters of the system argued that inmates were contributing positively to society by working rather than remaining idle, while also learning valuable trades that could help them secure employment after their release. However, the growing success of Sing Sing's industries also sparked fierce controversy across the United States. Labor unions, craftsmen, and factory owners who employed free workers increasingly protested against prison-made products. They argued that businesses using inmate labor enjoyed an unfair economic advantage because prisoners received little or no wages, allowing manufacturers to produce goods at significantly lower costs than competitors relying on paid employees. Skilled workers feared that prison industries were taking away jobs, lowering wages, and disrupting local economies. These concerns led to growing political pressure on lawmakers to regulate or limit the sale of prison-made goods. Public debate over prison labor intensified during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Critics questioned whether the primary purpose of prisons should be rehabilitation or profit. Some believed that inmates were being exploited for financial gain, working long hours under difficult conditions without receiving fair compensation. Others argued that prison labor remained an effective form of discipline that benefited both society and the prisoners themselves by teaching responsibility, reducing idleness, and developing practical skills. These competing viewpoints fueled decades of legal battles, legislative reforms, and public discussions about the ethics of correctional industries. As national attitudes toward labor and criminal justice evolved, federal and state governments introduced new laws restricting the sale and distribution of prison-made goods. Legislation such as the Hawes-Cooper Act of 1929 and the Asher-Sumners Act of 1935 placed significant limits on interstate commerce involving products manufactured by prisoners. These laws dramatically reduced the commercial reach of prison industries and forced institutions like Sing Sing to shift their focus toward producing goods primarily for government use rather than private markets. Although prison labor continued, its role within the American economy gradually became much smaller than it had been during the industry's peak. Even as commercial production declined, vocational training remained an important part of life at Sing Sing. Workshops increasingly emphasized teaching marketable skills instead of maximizing profits. Inmates received instruction in carpentry, welding, plumbing, electrical work, printing, maintenance, culinary arts, and other trades that could improve their chances of finding legal employment after release. This shift reflected changing correctional philosophies that viewed education and skill development as more effective tools for reducing repeat offenses than purely profit-driven labor programs. The industrial legacy of Sing Sing continues to influence discussions about prison labor in modern America. Historians view the prison as one of the earliest examples of large-scale correctional industries, demonstrating how incarceration became closely connected to economics, manufacturing, and government policy. The workshops that once filled the prison with the sounds of machinery and production helped shape national debates over workers' rights, business competition, criminal rehabilitation, and the proper role of labor within correctional institutions. The economic empire that grew around Sing Sing left a lasting mark on both the American prison system and the nation's industrial history, illustrating how one correctional facility became deeply intertwined with the country's broader economic development. No chapter in the history of Sing Sing Prison contributed more to its terrifying reputation than its role as one of America's most infamous execution centers. While the prison was already known for its strict discipline and dangerous inmates, it was the presence of the electric chair, known across the nation as Old Sparky, that transformed Sing Sing into a symbol of ultimate punishment. For generations of Americans, receiving a death sentence often meant one thing: a final journey through the gates of Sing Sing. Newspapers, radio broadcasts, and later television reports carried stories of executions performed within its walls, making the prison's name synonymous with fear, justice, controversy, and death. Before the late 19th century, executions in the United States were usually carried out by hanging. However, as public attitudes toward capital punishment evolved, many officials sought a method they believed would be faster and more humane. In the 1880s, New York established a commission to study alternative forms of execution. After extensive debate and scientific experimentation, the state selected electrocution as the new official method for carrying out death sentences. The first execution by electric chair in New York took place in 1890, marking the beginning of a new era in American criminal justice. Soon afterward, Sing Sing became the state's principal execution site, permanently linking its name to capital punishment. The execution chamber itself was located in a specially secured section of the prison, isolated from the general inmate population. Access to the chamber was tightly controlled, and only authorized personnel, prison officials, medical staff, legal representatives, clergy, and a limited number of witnesses were permitted inside during an execution. The room was deliberately simple and functional, with the electric chair positioned at its center. Every detail was carefully planned to ensure security, maintain official procedures, and minimize disruptions. Despite its ordinary appearance, the chamber became one of the most feared rooms in America. The electric chair, nicknamed Old Sparky, was built from heavy wood and fitted with metal restraints, electrodes, and specialized electrical equipment. Before an execution, prison staff carefully inspected every component to ensure that the equipment functioned properly. Condemned prisoners were securely strapped into the chair, with leather restraints fastened around their wrists, ankles, chest, and waist to prevent movement. Electrodes were attached to the prisoner's head and leg, allowing electrical current to pass through the body. A hood was often placed over the prisoner's face to shield witnesses from the physical effects of the execution. Every step followed detailed procedures established by state law and prison regulations. For inmates sentenced to death, the final days were spent in a separate section of the prison commonly known as death row. Here, prisoners lived under constant surveillance while awaiting the outcome of appeals, clemency requests, or the scheduled execution date. Some inmates spent only weeks awaiting execution, while others remained there for years as legal proceedings continued. Daily routines were highly restricted, with limited movement, closely monitored visits, and frequent contact with attorneys, clergy, and prison officials. The emotional burden of waiting for a scheduled execution placed enormous psychological pressure on both prisoners and correctional staff. As the execution date approached, prison officials followed a carefully organized series of procedures. Final legal documents were reviewed, medical personnel confirmed the prisoner's identity and physical condition, and the prison administration coordinated every aspect of the event. Condemned inmates were typically offered a final meal and given the opportunity to meet with family members, religious advisors, or legal counsel. Many prisoners spent their final hours writing letters, praying, reflecting on their lives, or speaking privately with clergy. These final moments varied greatly depending on the individual, with some maintaining remarkable composure while others struggled with fear, regret, or emotional distress. Executions at Sing Sing attracted enormous public attention throughout the 20th century. Whenever a notorious murderer, organized crime figure, kidnapper, or serial killer was scheduled for execution, newspapers across the country published detailed reports about the case. Journalists gathered outside the prison gates, waiting for official confirmation that the sentence had been carried out. Headlines describing executions at Sing Sing appeared in newspapers from coast to coast, ensuring that the prison remained constantly in the public eye. The phrase "sent to Sing Sing" became deeply embedded in American culture, symbolizing the final consequence for the nation's most serious crimes. Among the many individuals executed at Sing Sing were some of the most infamous criminals in American history. Gang leaders, professional killers, organized crime figures, kidnappers, and convicted murderers all passed through the prison's execution chamber. Each high-profile case attracted intense media coverage, often sparking heated public debates about justice, punishment, and the effectiveness of the death penalty. Some executions were widely supported by the public, while others generated controversy over questions of evidence, fairness, or the possibility of wrongful conviction. These cases helped shape national discussions about the role of capital punishment within the American legal system. The correctional officers assigned to the execution chamber carried one of the most difficult responsibilities in the prison. Although they were required to perform their duties professionally, many later described the emotional strain associated with participating in executions. Medical personnel, prison administrators, clergy, and witnesses also experienced the psychological weight of these events. Over time, some officials publicly questioned whether carrying out executions placed an unfair emotional burden on the individuals responsible for enforcing the law. These concerns contributed to broader debates about the human impact of capital punishment, affecting not only condemned prisoners, but also those tasked with carrying out the sentences. As attitudes toward the death penalty changed during the mid-20th century, public opinion became increasingly divided. Legal scholars, civil rights organizations, religious leaders, and lawmakers questioned whether executions truly deterred violent crime or whether the risk of executing innocent individuals outweighed any potential benefits. Advances in forensic science, including DNA testing, later revealed cases in which wrongfully convicted prisoners had spent years on death row before being exonerated. These developments intensified national discussions about fairness, due process, and the irreversible nature of capital punishment, placing institutions like Sing Sing at the center of a growing legal and moral debate. By the latter half of the 20th century, the number of executions at Sing Sing declined significantly as court decisions, legal reforms, and changes in state law reshaped the use of the death penalty. Eventually, New York suspended and later effectively ended executions, bringing an end to an era that had lasted for decades. Although the execution chamber no longer serves its original purpose, its history remains one of the most powerful and haunting aspects of Sing Sing's legacy. The image of Old Sparky continues to symbolize a period in American history when the prison stood at the heart of the nation's system of capital punishment, representing both the authority of the law and the enduring controversy surrounding the ultimate criminal sentence. Throughout its long history, Sing Sing Prison became home to some of the most infamous criminals ever convicted in the United States. Its reputation as a maximum security institution meant that many of the country's most dangerous murderers, organized crime figures, kidnappers, armed robbers, and violent offenders eventually passed through its gates. Every time a notorious criminal arrived, newspapers across America covered the story in detail, further strengthening Sing Sing's image as the prison reserved for society's most feared offenders. Over time, the prison became almost as famous as the criminals it housed, with its name appearing regularly in books, newspapers, documentaries, films, and courtroom reports. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the rapid growth of organized crime led many high-profile gangsters to serve sentences at Sing Sing. Criminal organizations operating in New York City and other major urban centers were frequently targeted by law enforcement, and many convicted members found themselves imprisoned within its walls. Some inmates had built vast criminal empires involving bootlegging, gambling, extortion, racketeering, and illegal trafficking, while others were convicted of sensational murder cases that captured national attention. Their presence increased security concerns inside the prison, forcing correctional officials to develop stricter procedures for controlling influential inmates who often attempted to maintain criminal connections from behind bars. Among the most well-known prisoners associated with Sing Sing was Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, who were convicted of conspiracy to commit espionage during the Cold War and were executed at the prison in 1953. Their case became one of the most controversial legal proceedings in American history, drawing worldwide attention and sparking intense political debate about national security, justice, and the death penalty. Another famous inmate was Albert Fish, one of America's most notorious serial killers, whose shocking crimes horrified the nation before his execution at Sing Sing. Over the decades, many other convicted murderers, kidnappers, organized crime figures, and notorious offenders either served sentences or faced execution there, ensuring that the prison remained constantly in the public spotlight. Housing such dangerous individuals presented enormous challenges for prison administrators. Correctional officers had to prevent escape attempts, control violence, manage rivalries between criminal groups, and maintain order among inmates, serving lengthy or life sentences. Maximum security housing units, frequent inspections, controlled movement, and strict surveillance became essential features of prison operations. Guards underwent specialized training to deal with violent offenders, while prison officials continuously revised security procedures in response to changing threats. The lessons learned at Sing Sing influenced correctional practices across the United States, with many other prisons adopting similar approaches to managing high-risk inmates. Despite its fearsome reputation, Sing Sing gradually became a place where important ideas about prison reform began to emerge. During the 19th century, prisons were largely designed around punishment, isolation, and hard labor. The prevailing belief was that severe discipline would discourage criminal behavior and protect society by making imprisonment as difficult as possible. However, by the early 20th century, many judges, criminologists, educators, and prison administrators began questioning whether punishment alone could successfully reduce crime. They argued that prisons should also prepare inmates to become productive citizens after release rather than simply confining them for years. One of the most influential figures in Sing Sing's history was Louis E. Laws, who served as warden from 1920 to 1941. Unlike many earlier prison administrators, Laws believed that maintaining security did not require abandoning humanity. While he enforced prison rules firmly, He also introduced reforms that emphasized education, vocational training, medical care, religious services, and opportunities for self-improvement. Laws encouraged prisoners to develop practical skills, improve their literacy, and prepare for employment after release. His leadership attracted national attention and helped reshape public discussions about the true purpose of imprisonment. Educational opportunities expanded steadily during this period. Libraries grew larger, classrooms were established, and inmates gained access to literacy programs, vocational courses, and correspondence education. Prisoners who had entered Sing Sing unable to read or write were given opportunities to acquire basic education, while others learned skilled trades such as carpentry, plumbing, electrical work, welding, printing, and mechanical repair. These programs reflected the growing belief that education could reduce repeat offending by giving former inmates legitimate ways to support themselves after returning to society. Religious organizations also played a significant role in changing life inside Sing Sing. Chaplains from various faiths provided spiritual guidance, counseling, and emotional support to prisoners struggling with guilt, addiction, or personal loss. Many inmates found comfort through religious services, while others participated in support groups designed to encourage responsibility and personal growth. Although these programs could not eliminate violence or conflict entirely, they provided many prisoners with hope and a sense of purpose during long periods of incarceration. The prison also experienced periods of overcrowding, unrest, and violence that challenged correctional officials. As inmate populations increased throughout the 20th century, housing shortages placed tremendous pressure on prison resources. Cell blocks designed for fewer prisoners often held far more than originally intended, leading to cramped living conditions, increased tension, and occasional disturbances. Fights between inmates, assaults on correctional officers, contraband smuggling, and gang activity forced administrators to continually strengthen security while searching for more effective ways to maintain order. National movements for civil rights and prison reform during the 1960s and 1970s brought even greater changes. Courts increasingly recognized that incarcerated individuals retained certain constitutional rights despite their imprisonment. Lawsuits challenged prison conditions, medical care, disciplinary practices, overcrowding, and access to legal representation. As a result, Sing Sing and many other correctional institutions introduced improvements in healthcare, sanitation, nutrition, legal access, recreation, and inmate grievance procedures. These reforms reflected a broader shift in American society toward balancing institutional security with respect for human dignity and legal protections. Another important development was the introduction of rehabilitation programs focused on addressing the underlying causes of criminal behavior. Substance abuse treatment, anger management classes, mental health counseling, educational achievement, vocational certification, and family reunification initiatives became increasingly common. Prison administrators recognized that many inmates struggled with addiction, trauma, limited education, or unstable family environments before committing crimes. By addressing these issues, correctional officials hoped to reduce repeat offenses and improve public safety after prisoners completed their sentences. Modern Sing Sing continues to reflect this balance between security and rehabilitation. It remains a maximum security prison responsible for housing serious offenders, but it also offers educational programs, job training, counseling services, college-level instruction, and restorative justice initiatives that encourage accountability and personal transformation. Programs involving theater, journalism, arts education, and mentoring have received national recognition for demonstrating that meaningful rehabilitation can occur even within one of America's most historically feared prisons. These evolving approaches illustrate how Sing Sing has transformed from a symbol of harsh punishment into an institution that also represents the ongoing effort to combine justice, public safety, accountability, and the possibility of meaningful change within the American correctional system. The legacy of Sing Sing Prison extends far beyond its towering stone walls and maximum security cell blocks. For more than 2 centuries, the prison has influenced nearly every aspect of the American correctional system, including prison architecture, security practices, inmate labor, rehabilitation programs, correctional management, and public attitudes toward crime and punishment. Few prisons in the United States have had such a lasting impact on the nation's legal and social history. Even today, the name Sing Sing immediately evokes images of strict discipline, notorious criminals, dramatic court cases, and one of the most recognizable correctional institutions ever built. Its story has become deeply woven into the history of American justice itself. As one of the oldest continuously operating prisons in the United States, Sing Sing has witnessed nearly every major transformation in American corrections. It existed during the era of silent prisons and forced labor, survived the rise of industrial prison workshops, became the center of the state's capital punishment system, adapted to the expansion of inmate rights, and continues to evolve alongside modern correctional philosophies. Few institutions have remained active through so many different periods of American history while constantly adapting to changing laws, political priorities, and public expectations. The prison also played a major role in shaping correctional architecture throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. Its massive stone walls, secure cell blocks, central guard positions, controlled movement systems, and carefully planned housing units became models for numerous prisons constructed across the country. Engineers and prison administrators frequently studied Sing Sing's design when planning new correctional facilities, believing that its layout offered effective methods for maintaining order and preventing escapes. Many of the architectural principles first demonstrated at Sing Sing can still be recognized in modern correctional institutions, although they have been updated with contemporary security technologies. Beyond its physical design, Sing Sing greatly influenced the professional development of correctional officers and prison administrators. Managing one of the nation's largest and most complex prisons required sophisticated organizational systems, specialized staff training, emergency planning, inmate classification procedures, and security protocols. Lessons learned through decades of operating Sing Sing helped establish professional standards that spread throughout correctional systems across the United States. Modern correctional agencies continue to study historical experiences at institutions like Sing Sing when developing policies for inmate supervision, crisis management, rehabilitation, and institutional safety.